So today's talk is about radical corporate transparency. When I first started researching sustainability within corporate reporting, this became a very big part of the story. You see, when I started my career more than 30 years ago as a CPA financial auditor, corporations were really just reporting financial information with a little bit of information on the side related to environmental compliance, mostly related to any potential risk, and or a little bit around corporate philanthropy. And there were some companies back in the 80s like Ben & Jerry's and Seventh Generation and Stonyfield Farms and Patagonia that were pioneering companies that were really measuring and reporting a wider variety of environmental and social initiatives. And the big part of the story today is that now all major corporations are sharing a much greater amount of information. Companies from Nike and Starbucks to IBM and Hewlett-Packard, the biggest corporations in the world, are tracking and reporting a much wider variety of environmental and social information. Now, the types of information that they are reporting and the metrics include everything from solid waste to landfill and gallons of water consumed, as well as wastewater reported, everything from reducing packaging material to energy usage, and a series of other initiatives on the social side, things involving everything to volunteer hours of employees, fair trade initiatives, and how all of their raw materials and ingredients in their products are sourced. So we're in the garden, and as I've said, the study of ecology and growing food and permaculture has really informed my understanding of sustainable business practices. And one of the key principles in gardening, in permaculture, is observation, is looking closely day in and day out at what is changing. And if you will, I'd like to invite you to consider how this relates to corporate transparency. Often we make quick judgments about what's happening, and one of the exciting things that I think corporate transparency leads to is the ability for us to look more closely, to engage more fully and observe more carefully what's happening inside these really enormous enterprises with tens or hundreds of thousands of people and in dozens of countries around the world. And so here in the garden, I have observed for 3 or 4 years, roughly the same amount of time I've been studying the sustainable business movement. And I've had a chance to observe, for instance, my orchard and how it's changed over 3 and 4 years. And in particular, I like to think of corporations as trees that are growing and spreading their branches and drawing water and nutrients from the earth as a metaphor for all the raw materials, and then how they are creating their products and services similar to the way a tree grows fruit. Now I know that's a creative, outside the box idea, but the point I really want to make here is that all the information that's being reported by corporations today is an invitation to customers, to employees, to a wide variety of stakeholders to observe and look more closely at really what's happening in greater detail. So I'd like to conclude today's talk about corporate transparency by sharing with you what I see as three of the significant interrelated outcomes and consequences of all of this greater transparency and information. First, the information that's being tracked and reported leads directly to greater innovation, greater creativity, and greater design. For instance, when you look at the Nike Considered Index and you listen to their executives talk about how that has now really driven the design of products, you get a feel for, by identifying key metrics, reporting them in a very transparent way, you have all of your employees, all of the companies in your supply chain start to understand the environmental and social impacts of products, which leads to redesigning manufacturing products, how products are sourced, and it leads to really new and exciting innovations in terms of products. Secondly, the outcome of transparency leads to a much greater level of engagement of employees and customers, which creates a higher level of satisfaction amongst the employees. It also creates a greater level of empowerment, which leads to more input and a stronger culture and really just a greater experience in any organization that's reporting a wide variety of measurement. This also is closely related to recruiting and retaining people that really want to work for a company that has a greater social and environmental mission. And then finally, the third outcome is collaboration. By reporting all of this information, you can have a wide variety of non-governmental organizations, groups that previously were kind of more on the outside. The biggest environmental NGOs in the world, like the World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, are now able to work much more closely with the largest corporations of the world because there's all this information that's now being reported, being tracked. There are a wide variety of initiatives that I will speak to you in future segments that are wonderful examples of how greater transparency is leading to greater collaboration, leading to a much higher level of creativity and bringing capitalism, environmentalism, and human rights together.